Last hour, you heard us talk to Mark Levin about the 2024 race. We also talked about the war in Ukraine. Here's more from that interview. Mark, tonight on Life, Liberty, and Levin, you have Florida Governor Ron DeSantis in an extended conversation. This comes, Mark, as he's talking about a bill in Florida that's going to overhaul the state's public university system, look to do away with a lot of these DEI racist initiatives. And at the same time, Mark, as well, that people like the Wall Street Journal are saying the war in Ukraine is a real test for any presidential aspirant, and specifically Governor Ron DeSantis. What did you learn in this conversation you had with the governor?
A couple of things. I don't allow a columnist or a newspaper to drive the agenda when it comes to me. So whether Ukraine is a decisive issue or not, or how that plays out, I'm not 100% sure, but I will say this. I don't interview people based on what journalists have to say, or gotcha, or gossip. Do I look like Andrea Mitchell? I'm not Andrea Mitchell. So I try to have the guest explain to me and to the audience who they are, what their background is, to go deep into the substance of the things that they've actually dealt with. But I do want to talk about Ukraine, because you're three of the most wonderful people that I know, and we have a very, very deep disagreement on this. And it's this. I think we can agree that one of the reasons Putin invaded Ukraine is because how we surrendered in Afghanistan. And Pete, you would know this better than anybody.
I agree with that.
Donald Trump was not a pacifist. Donald Trump didn't cut and run. Donald Trump didn't cut off allies, whether it was in Syria or Iraq, whether he took on ISIS and took out Soleimani. So the key word here should not be ideology, it should be prudence. When it comes to foreign policy, each case is different. But let me suggest this to you. If you had told me 10 years ago that we could spend $100 billion and come close to defeating the Russian military, people would have thought you're smoking something. The fact of the matter is this. The Ukrainian people are not going to surrender. They didn't invade Russia. Russia invaded them. They're not going to roll over and play dead. They haven't asked for a single American troop. All they keep asking for is weapons. Why? Because in 1994, they cut a deal with the United States, Britain, and Russia. And the deal was, we will give you our nukes, we will give you our heavy military equipment if you protect our sovereignty. And they agreed. So they lay there naked, and they're invaded, and Putin knows it, and he's a monster to his own people. But folks, did you hear what his number two said yesterday? Did you hear that he said that they're going to challenge Poland's borders now? It's what he said. He said it with his own mouth. He speaks for Putin. They're going to challenge Poland's borders. Romania says, and when they're done with Poland, they're going to attack us. Why do you think Poland, Romania, and the Balkan states are taking all the military equipment they possibly have and pushing it into Ukraine? Because the Ukrainian people are preventing World War III. Because once they touch a NATO country, that's the red line that triggers World War III. So I think people are looking at this upside down. What's in Ukraine for us? Ukraine is the fight to prevent World War III. Now, he keeps threatening nuclear weapons. Okay, so what are we going to do about Iran when they get nuclear weapons? Has anybody in this country talked about taking out their nuclear sites other than the Israelis? Can you imagine if the Ukrainians had nuclear weapons and the threats that they would make? North Korea has nuclear weapons. They're threatening Japan and Australia as I speak. We can't be ostriches and pretend none of this is going on. This is not Afghanistan. This is not a 20-year war. It's not going to be a 20-year war. If we withdraw, it's going to be a 3-week war, and then they move into Poland. The issue isn't that. Evil lasts forever. War shouldn't last forever. Anybody who's a person of faith, when you go into church on Sunday or you go to synagogue on Saturday, it's always the battle between God and the devil. That is, we versus evil. Well, evil exists. Evil persists. We could pass a law like they did at the League of Nations in the 1920s and outlaw war. It's not going to be outlawed. That's the way it is. So I would say, as a big-time taxpayer, if we can support the Ukrainians, who are fighting this war like nobody thought they could, nobody, to defend the rest of Europe, because that is what the hell they're doing, and to keep our kids from being drafted because we are not meeting our volunteer numbers, then I say we keep at it. And what Joe Biden has done is a disgrace. Why? Because there's certain weapon systems the Ukrainians need to put an end to this war. I don't mean attack Russia, but put an end to this war. And Biden is bleeding these people dry. He's not giving them the weapons they need. I'm not even talking about F-16s, long-range missiles. He's not giving them the weapons. He's always, I call him too little, too late Joe, because that's what he is. If we stop supporting Ukraine, if you think Afghanistan was a signal to Russia, I think so, Trump thinks so, most of you think so, what do you think China will do with Taiwan? They're going to invade Taiwan. How are we going to defend Taiwan? We have a Navy that's under 300 ships now. Under Reagan, we had a 600-ship Navy, 600 ships. Under Reagan, we spent 5.7% of our gross domestic product on defense. Today, it's 2.7%. The communist Chinese are on the rise. They are a nation on the rise. They are spending a fortune on their military. People say, well, we spend more than they do. No, we don't. They give us the numbers. They're liars. And their civilian and military economies are fused. One is the same as the other. They have a massive infantry. Their navy's bigger than ours. They're right off the coast of Taiwan. We're not going to be able to defend that little island. Then what do you think Iran's going to do with Israel? Iran, North Korea, China, and Russia now have an access. It's an open access. And if we think putting our heads in the sand, what we should be doing now is building up our military. People talk peace through strength. Where's the strength? It's not right to have our men and women in the military, and I would say this, Pete, I know you understand this, who are not properly supported. No. We have commanders in the field. We have generals in the Pacific, admirals in the Pacific saying, as much as they can publicly, that I don't know that we can win a battle with the Chinese.
Yeah.
We used to be able to fight on two fronts at the same time. We can barely fight on one. We're running out of ammunition in Ukraine. How is that possible?
For the same thing, Mark.
How is that possible? Our ruling class is incompetent. They're misleading the American people. If we don't handle this right, it will be World War III. And the answer isn't pacifism in the face of aggression. The answer isn't withdrawal in the face of aggression. The answer is prudence. Build up our military, be prepared, make sure Europe isn't attacked, Eastern Europe, through Ukraine, because that's his plan. Whether you want to believe it or not, read what he wrote and listen to what his number two said yesterday. Why don't we accept what they say? So your question to me is, will this be a big issue with the Republicans? Maybe. We've got a lot of problems in this country, an open border, crime. We've got a Democrat Party that is trying to destroy capitalism and replace it with Marxism. We have our children being indoctrinated rather than educated. We have parents being targeted by the FBI. We have pro-lifers being targeted by the FBI. We have a former president being targeted by the FBI. This country's unraveling. So for Jill Biden to circle back, to sit there and say, he's got more to do, Biden, ladies and gentlemen, if we don't unite and defeat these people, they will defeat us, both overseas and at home. I'm done rambling. There you go.
No, we love it, Mark. We love having, this is a debate we have over the course of a weekend that the Republican Party is having, that the country's having. And certainly on this show, we love having all sides represented, especially from someone as thoughtful as you. So we appreciate you coming on and breaking that down. And it will be a part of that debate in the Republican side.
Will be.
There's absolutely no doubt about it. But we want to make sure we promote your interview with Ron DeSantis tonight on the Fox News channel. We're going to play a quick clip from this interview. There it is, 8 p.m. Don't miss it. I mean, Mark Levin and Ron DeSantis, you're going to want to watch it. Here's a quick preview of the interview. Watch.
My view was, hey, I may have won 50% of the vote, but I have 100% of the executive power. So I'm going to use it, and I'm going to pursue an agenda, and I'm going to be bold. I'm not going to trim my sails. So we came out of the gate January 2019, and we were just off to the races. And you know what? It's hard for them to keep up with you when you're constantly doing new things and leading on different issues. And we've pretty much kept that pace going throughout my entire tenure as governor. And people see you out there, they see you're active, but it makes it more difficult for these narratives to actually take hold when they're coming to shoot at you.
Mark, looks great. We will all be watching tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, your interview with Governor Ron DeSantis. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Mark.
We appreciate it.
God bless you all. You guys are great.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.